welcome to this, the second edition of the Dragon Ball themed podcast with a bit of a difference because it is very high up in the sky as we continue to be up on the lookout. For those of you who don't know, Up on the Lookout is a Dragon Ball themed podcast hosted by myself, Masako X, as well as our trusty sidekick Haverok.
Hello, I am the guy with the funny accent.
And we are also joined by our guest who has been able to use the Nyoibo or the Power Pole or whatever you want to say to join us. It is our R&R Trunks, Lucia Lobosvilla.
Hi everyone.
Yes, all three of us will be talking about Dragon Ball for the next X minutes, depends on how long we go for, because we are Dragon Ball geeks and nerds, so it may go on for a little bit long, but who knows? We might find out later on, but I don't think you matter because you're actually listening to this.
I prefer the term Dragon Ball Scholar, personally.
Yeah.
Well, we could always say that Dragon Ball Elite or the Super Elite, depends if you're a Galactic Patrol member or something like that. But either way, we sort of know our stuff. I probably know the least out of this group. But either way, we will have some very exciting topics as well as some very insightful ones for those of you who don't necessarily know about the machinations of Dragon Ball. So with that, let's get started. So like I said in the introduction, we are joined by Lucia Lobosvilla. So it's very nice to have you up here on the lookout, Lucia.
It's wonderful to be here, and I just get such a kick of how excellent you've gotten at pronouncing my name, because when we first met, you mispronounced it. It became like a meme, and I'm like, oh, Masako, you're so thoughtful that you took the time to learn how to say it so perfectly, so thank you.
I knew you'd say that. I knew it would come up, but instantly, okay, bam, within the first 5 minutes. Okay.
I wanted to praise you for it, because it's not an easy name to say at all.
No, it's absolutely fine. I like a challenge. I've been studying languages since the age of 4, so I'm always keen to know how to say things properly, so.
Well, I think it was very, very considerate of you. Thank you.
He was training in a recluse British monastery, learning the martial arts of languages.
Give us a snapshot of you, Lucia. So, for those of you who don't know, Lucia does voice Trunks in our Dragon Ball R&R, but what else do you do?
She is a person of many talents, you know.
Oh, gosh. I work at Starman Studios. They're a voice acting, dubbing, content creation studio here in Dallas. They're actually the biggest North American dubbing company at the moment. They moved into a new office and they have the most booths and everything. So that's really exciting. I know COVID has kind of slowed things down for the moment, but once everything opens back up, I hope people will come. We do demo reel creation. We offer bundles if you want your demo reel and a headshot, because we have an in-house photographer and everything. So besides that, I, of course, voice act. I was so honored to be able to work on R&R with Masako because Trunks was the first voice I started kind of imitating as a kid besides the Animaniacs. So first anime voice, I've done it for so long. Besides that, I write. I write, translate probably even more than I voice act, especially now because I've been kind of froggy voiced for a while. But since Avatar's on Netflix and everyone's talking about that, I actually wrote for this promotional video that they showed at Comic-Con for season 3 called Avatar: The Last Puppet Bender. It was commissioned by Dave Roman from Nick Magazine. And Kevin Copa made the puppets for it and I helped write it. So that was my big writing break, was doing that for Avatar. So I'm a huge Avatar nerd.
Oh, wow. That's brilliant. Yeah, no, it's been really interesting seeing Avatar on Netflix. So this must have been a really nice thing to see. Just a nice little callback to, one of the things that you truly cherish, professionally.
You hit the nail on the head. It's been such a blast from the past, so nostalgic, but Avatar will always have such a special place in my heart, just like Dragon Ball does.
Oh, well, that's awesome. That's really great. Incidentally, just talking about voice acting, I realized that one thing I wanted to do when I hit 500k, because I don't know how long it will take, but originally, I wanted to actually just have a little party with my friends nearby, but obviously, due to circumstances, parties aren't really recommended. Yeah, because lots of people around, and admittedly now, I've become even more of a NEET than I was, but it's people. But I hit upon an idea for 500k There is a Korean anime called Protectors of Universe, and it's horribly bad. And the dub is atrocious, but it's atrocious in a good way. You can easily find it on YouTube, on like a YouTube channel called Free to See Movies. It's public domain, essentially. The dub is just so bonkers, and it rips off Mazinger 7. Like Mazinger. They just use the name Mazinger. Boom. And like the evil forces of Alfred and General Larry. It's like 4Kids, but like 20 years before 4Kids. But
Pre-4Kids, 2 kids.
Keep the character names and stuff like that, but just change the script up a bit, make it a legit dub, because it's free game, pretty much.
From what you're describing, it sounds like Dragon Ball in Poland. Oh, wow.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, well, just look up Protectors of Universe and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It was part of a trilogy, or I'd say trilogy loosely, with one called Defenders of Space. It's like they forgot to use the word the. So it's like, okay, Protectors of the Universe, I could see that, but Protectors of Universe, it's just special.
They're like, time is money. We ain't got time for full, complete sentences.
Neither have they got the time to dub things correctly, because they all sound the same, and it's... Apparently this was recorded in... The English dub was recorded in 1995. It does not sound like it was 1995. More like 1975.
Oh my God. Speed Racer style. Like, haha, I'm going to protect the universe with you. Haha.
I recently found clips from Speed Racer, and oh my god, this haven't aged well, or aged pretty well, depending on what you think.
I think I remember one of the actors just saying that they didn't bother scripting it too much to be in sync, so they kind of just sped things up really quickly.
It didn't used to be as big of an industry. There wasn't as much money for it, so they just kind of threw out whatever.
And besides, nobody knew the truth, and nobody knew the actual dialogue, because it came from Japan over there. But either way, we're digressing. So you kind of get a good insight in store. We're geeking out a lot over something I might do at 500k. Let's get on to our mini topic, which is something we talked about last week. So for today's mini topic, we're kind of like touching base again with the article that we were talking about last week, Haverok and I, about Kazuhiko Torishima's interview and him saying that Dragon Ball has no meaning. This was provided to us by Derek Padula, and he did a fantastic contribution for our podcast. It was about like 11 minutes originally. I had to cut it down for time, obviously, and for certain words, he got very colorful. So I had to trim it down a little bit just to make it a bit more palatable for general audiences. But either way, his enthusiasm for this and why he would respectfully disagree. So basically it was like Family Guy. Oh, Kazuhiko Torishima, I disagree.
That's especially funny to me because Derek Padula is actually a quite talented martial artist. So
seriously, I read that article, and you can listen to the previous episode for more of our musings about it. But suffice to say, it was pretty eye-opening, but also at the same time, sort of understandable.
I think that this topic is one that we're going to be debating forever. And the problem with art and trying to find intrinsic value is that art by necessity is made for expression. And there's always going to be people that find value in it and people that don't. It's not like, say a dishwasher. A dishwasher washes dishes. It has value for that. Art can literally change the world. Like, let's not pretend. There have been books and art that have changed regimes. So let's not pretend it doesn't have power. But because the value is not so intrinsic, people can think that's frivolous, and that's not the truth at all. Human beings are so much more than just, utilitarian. There is an expressive side to us. Sometimes it's easy to kind of get caught up in thinking, well, I need to prove this has value. Otherwise, the value I perceive in it is invalid. And that's not true. When I see Torishima saying that Dragon Ball doesn't have meaning, I think of myself as experience I've had as an editor and sometimes reading things that didn't speak to me, or that I knew the writer was kind of messing around, not taking seriously. They were just writing for fun. And so it was easy for me to think there's not really meaning in this. But if another person, that was in that age group or was the target audience thought, wow, this really relates to me, this speaks to me, for me to say that there would be no value isn't accurate. I think that maybe Torishima may have been more trying to say that there weren't intended messages, because Toriyama quite famously just kind of writes for fun and writes whatever. It's why he's never been too concerned about continuity or world building, to the point that people get frustrated with him for being able to forget important plot elements sometimes. Someone like Derek Padula, who is a very, very educated scholar and who has worked very hard to study different languages and the culture from which these works derived, of course, is getting a lot of meaning, not to mention the meaning he got from it when he was younger. Like a lot of us, I'm sure Dragon Ball meant a lot to us and got us through hard times. So we derive a lot of meaning. And to hear an editor say there's no meaning to us can feel insulting. But I think maybe we're reading Torishima wrong, because I don't think he's necessarily meaning that there can't be meaning or you can't take value from it. But to him, it's kind of funny because he, at work, edited this wacky manga that we have to remember he had to keep Toriyama in line sometimes, because Toriyama had no care about copyright infringement or things like that. Like, he'd just throw in Star Wars.
Yeah. Terminator.
Well, the funny thing is that in this article, and with Derek's thoughts, he actually said that Torishima was like lining up to be a magazine editor for Playboy. So he wanted to edit the articles, as it were.
The actual articles.
He ended up at Shonen Jump. So he sort of was like this disgruntled guy who could have just been like, I could have been somebody in the adult entertainment area, but instead I'm having to work on this kids magazine or something like that. So maybe his heart wasn't really in it.
Part of it's also, he's seen behind the curtain. He's seen that Toriyama's not putting deep thought into it. Toriyama, is just writing for fun. So for him, of course, he's like, no, there's no meaning. Toriyama didn't put meaning. But this is where death of the author kind of thinking is important. It's the same way where you may not agree with J.K. Rowling's beliefs or how her own biases may have influenced Harry Potter. That doesn't mean you can't find meaning in Harry Potter. And I think it's the same. Toriyama may have written Dragon Ball just kind of goofing off because it's something he thought was fun and he'd want to read. And Torishima may have edited it thinking, this is just a silly kids manga. Like, he doesn't care, I don't care, whatever. That doesn't mean that the meaning you derive from it wasn't valid, or that a work of art that had deeper meaning couldn't have come without intent. That's kind of the crazy thing about art.
Yeah, and what we said last week, right? You read, part of reading art is reading it in new contexts, which is really important. And he doesn't stack me as somebody who's particularly artsy, he's much more pragmatic. And I don't think we should hold it against him, just respectfully disagree.
I actually completely agree with you, Haverok. And I think it's actually important, because if we let pure creative forces like Toriyama write whatever they want, whenever they want, we sometimes need the Torishimas of the world to come in and kind of make things more comprehensible and put structure. So we might kind of be like, boo, Torishima, you party pooper. But without the grounding force of Torishima, we probably would not have the Dragon Ball that we love. So I think we should appreciate people like Torishima, even if we disagree with his analysis of the text.
He was the necessary evil of the text, yeah.
Obviously, Torishima moved on eventually, but it was that template and what Toriyama wanted to have. So the next editor he butted heads with even more, but we got the Cell Saga out of it. But with Yu Kondo, his third editor, he basically allowed Toriyama to do whatever he wanted. And it's my personal belief that they wanted to keep him around, Shueisha. So just let Toriyama do whatever he wants to do to make sure he just puts out the manga for another couple of years so I can actually have a backup plan. And we obviously got it. And we basically saw Toriyama going through this kind of adventure of thought experiments, which is the Boo Saga. So it's a very deep and insightful inspection of what he was going through. It's like, I came up with this. I came up with this amorphous blob genie character who basically runs roughshod over everything. It's completely gag-driven. Gotenks is a thing. We come up with Fusion, which is one of the best things about Dragon Ball and one of the most iconic.
Agree to disagree. Sorry.
Well, it's something that... okay, it's marketable and profitable.
It's memorable. For better or for worse, it's memorable.
Okay.
It's impactful.
That's a tactful way to say it. It's memorable. Memorable, because it's better for it to be memorable than people just going like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's the worst thing that can happen. It can be bad, it can be great, it can be somewhere in between. But if it's boring or something that doesn't really elicit a response at all, I would say that's actually the worst thing you could ever have.
I think you're touching on something really big there. When we see the Cell Saga, which a lot of people think is one of the best sagas, we see Toriyama actually struggling with what a more rigid editor was asking of him. Oh, the androids aren't scary enough, so he makes 17 and 18. Oh, well, they're not scary enough either, so he makes Cell. And we end up with one of the best sagas in a lot of people's opinions. I think it came out of that adversity and that rigid, confining situation he was put in. But on the other hand, we see the Boo Saga, which has so many iconic and fascinating concepts, but the saga itself is kind of incoherent. Things don't really build, things start and stop, things get dropped and picked up. And I think there we see again a creative force without that kind of grounding force to balance him.
Yeah, we basically see both sides of the coin. We see someone being controlled with tons of supervision and very strict guidelines to an editor who gives him barely any. Just don't do anything like, Miura levels of gore or anything like that. Just
and no Star Wars.
Or at least, if you're going to do Star Wars, just keep it on the down low or anything like that.
No copyright infringement and you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
Less Terminator, yeah.
Just a little less Terminator.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no, after that previous arc, it was like, oh, geez, okay. Oh, my goodness. But, yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say is that with the Moro arc in the manga, it's certainly getting there. And if they stick the landing in terms of the ending, the Moro arc could be up there with the Cell arc, especially if they can translate it well to an anime form, which might explain why, not just with the whole kind of global situation at the moment, but they're waiting for there to be a full arc ready to go before then actually doing the anime. So there's actually content, because Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z was at its best when it actually had something to work on instead of having nothing, which is what Super had mostly.
And I must say, again, don't at me, this is my biased opinion, but I'm enjoying Moro Saga in the manga much more than Boo Saga in Z. So that's if I would say where Super went better than Z, in my opinion, it's Moro Saga versus Boo Saga. It's not as good, as previous Dragon Ball, but it's definitely right after the other sagas.
I can definitely respect that opinion. I'm probably the most negative towards Super out of the three of us. I'm really not fond of what they've done. But even so, it's kind of nice to see that they're at least doing more complete story arcs as opposed to before, where it kind of felt like the manga was just kind of the anime was just meandering and the manga was just kind of going with it.
If you look at Dragon Ball Super Episode 1 to Episode 131, Super Episode 1 just fits not at all with modern tastes. Whereas 131, it looks modern. It looks pretty much in keeping with how anime should look. It could be a bit more adventurous. Broly did do that. So you feel like, yeah, Super Dragon Ball, it feels like it could work nowadays. Whereas back in 2015, it felt a bit dated, almost.
You can get very positive reactions from fans by reutilizing some of the original cast. Don't tell me, guys, that seeing Yamcha kicking butts in that chapter didn't feel good.
I definitely agree. I mean, I'm a big Yamcha fan. Everyone knows that. But also, I think that Goku's arc has been completed so many times over that sometimes it gets frustrating to just keep going through the story beats with Goku. And it's so much more fun to take a break and be like, hey, let's explore the other characters who still have so much left to explore.
My favorite thing in the Moro arc, yes, he is a simplistic villain. Goku isn't gaining any kind of happiness of fighting him when Moro is knows his tricks and is playing him, and Goku is, I don't like to fight this strong guy anymore. That's kind of refreshing, That's catharsis by proxy.
It's like, it's like Frieza in the DBZA. You go, Daddy, I don't want to be on Namek anymore. It's like Goku's going Daddy, I don't want to fight this guy anymore.
It's so refreshing because, like, one of the biggest...
Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah, spoilers. Spoilers. One of the biggest downsides, a lot of us have had about Super, one of, the biggest complaints is that Goku gets out scot-free out of any stupid situation that he causes. And now seeing our marvelous Ramen Man, because he's a Ram, not a goat, marvelous Ramen Man, beating the living crap out of him and just being, I thought you'd be stronger,
That was a great accent, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, it's our headcanon that Moro should have a Scottish accent.
Yeah.
So,
It should be. I agree.
oh, Goku, that's cute, ya wee beastie lad. Well, I can show you true strength and might through magic.
So what you're saying is David Tennant should voice him.
Yes.
Yeah, either that, or if you want to go full like surrealness, you have Billy Connolly, or you can go Robbie Coltrane. You can basically anything that sounds sinister. You get Taggart. But anyway, I think this is a really good way to wrap up the mini topic. Really, with Torishima, it's what you make of it, really. It's really sad to see him thinking like this, but when you take a step back and look at the thing from like a creative's point of view, there is somewhere where you have to kind of like think and just go like, okay, I need to distance myself from this. So just an important thing to remember, but it's never nice to hear or see.
Your art that you appreciate is not invalidated just because someone else didn't like it or didn't see it the way you did. So no matter what Twitter tells you.
Yep.
So I think this leads on nicely to our kind of follow-up on this mini topic with our maxi topic. So today with the maxi topic, we're kind of going back to probably what is considered one of the most obvious connections to Dragon Ball and things that have been actually referenced to in Dragon Ball many, many times, even by Toriyama himself. Even though Torishima thinks there is no meaning, Toriyama does show meaning in it. Even though sometimes it can be a bit madcap and a bit more slapstick than we think, there is meaning in there. We are talking about, with the help of Lucia obviously, about Journey to the West. It is a very fascinating kind of novel series, basically centuries old, which obviously Goku, Son Wukong, that kind of connection. But it's really, really part of the DNA and the initial heart of Dragon Ball, especially when you connect it to the original series. It may not seem as obvious if you come into Dragon Ball straight from Z, but if you've been there since the beginning, or you really know a lot about the first series, you actually sort of get it. And even really with Super actually does a better job at connecting with Journey to the West than Z did.
So it's been a few years since I've read it. I really need to refresh myself on it, but I love it. It's considered one of the 4 Chinese great literary classics. My personal favorite of them, although Red Room is also quite good. Derek Padula, please forgive me for mispronouncing names. I do not speak Chinese, but I will do my best. So I think what's most fascinating about Journey to the West is knowing that it was very loosely based on a true story, not unlike the Odyssey. Obviously, there wasn't, or the Iliad, there weren't actually gods running around in the battlefield and, doing all that stuff like in the Odyssey and Iliad. But those historical events, the war happened. Journey to the West is similar. And it tells the story of a real monk named, again, forgive me if I say it wrong, Xuanzang. And he was a monk who basically was just a huge weeb for Buddhism. And it was really sad that they had very poorly translated text was all they had and very limited. So he took a journey to India. And I think what's remarkable is he applied for a travel visa because at that time, China was very insular and you couldn't leave without getting permission. And multiple times he was turned down. And he believed it was because he was a nobody. So what did he do? He just went anyway on foot. He couldn't even take main roads a lot of the time or risk getting caught by the authorities, illegally traveling. So he had to take like back roads and barely avoid dangerous deserts and hide in like monasteries when he wasn't just sleeping out in the wilderness. And he did that all in sandals, which, oh my God. And I think that's a remarkable story. And he did it. He accomplished it. He got to India. He stayed there for over a decade studying. And then he walked all the way back with his scrolls. And the reason I think his story has survived is in big part because of Journey to the West. in the West, we've only started to realize that, with Dragon Ball becoming big and us starting to find some media that's influenced by it. But in China, in Japan, in those parts of the world, it's a story that's as well known as any, fairy story here in the States. There are analogs for almost every early Dragon Ball character. There's like an equivalent Journey to the West character.
I think a lot of the fan base tends to just pay it lip service in a way. Because I remember I did a video on Journey to the West, and, it didn't really get that much traction because people were like, yeah, I know. Like, did they really know about the inner machinations of it? Probably not. There are so many other things, not just the whole thing about, Son Wukong's a monkey king and stuff like that. Oh, Goku's a Saiyan. Saiyans are monkeys. There's more to it if you want to look deeper.
I think a lot of people are under the misconception that it's going to be this boring old timey story and who needs it because we can just watch Dragon Ball, right? And I don't think they realize that this story is actually filled with action. It's like the first shonen. They're always just running around and getting into fights. Like, it's hilarious. Like, the original is hilarious, not just Dragon Ball. It's kind of funny because people always say Dragon Ball is like a gag adaptation of Journey to the West. And I'm like, it is, but Journey to the West was also really funny. It did something that a lot of literature at the time didn't do. It's kind of very, very remarkable in that the characters' inner psychological issues, their torments, their things they were being put through, their emotions affect their actions. And you have to remember, this is before, we've grown up spoiled with character development and arcs and all that being so character focused. You have to remember, in ancient literature, that wasn't always the case, that oftentimes characters just kind of walked along to the end of the plot, And so to have a story that often examined, characters get discouraged, characters quit, characters leave, characters have secret motivations and backstories. All of that was very advanced for the time. It's hugely influential and it still holds up. I highly recommend just start reading it. If you're having trouble reading it, there's so many people online that have made reading guides, have made YouTube videos with animatics, like to help you get into it. But it's really remarkable. And everybody knows that Goku is based on Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. But a lot of people don't realize that characters like Yamcha are based on a demon from Journey to the West, or Oolong. Even Bulma is supposed to be the monk, the one that I said, Xuanzang was the original, like, actual living person it was based on. In the story, it's a fictionalized version named Tan Sanzang. He's like related to the Tang Emperor because this takes place during the Tang Dynasty. And they call him Tripitaka is another name. In most English translations, you'll see him called Tripitaka. The reasons why has to do with titles and all that, but let's just call him Tripitaka because it's easy to say. The whole joke about Bulma is funnier when you realize who Tripitaka is, because the monk is very, very respectful and, loves all living things. He's so peaceful. He offers for demons to eat his body rather than, kill others. That's the kind of person he is. He embodies Buddhism. And that's why it's so funny that Bulma's like this spoiled brat that shoots Goku the first time she sees him.
Sometimes one character have few interpretations. I also met that, Tripitaka is first, first proxy for Tripitaka is Bulma, but later Krillin becomes that proxy. One of my favorite things is one of the legends tell that, Sun Wukong was born from a magic stone that sits atop the mountain of flowers and fruit, I think. And this stone developed like a magical womb, which opened one day to produce a stone egg about the size of a ball. And if you think about Goku being, found in a Saiyan pod, I love this so much. Like this, Sun Wukong being like born from a stone ball, and image of Goku being found in the round capsule. It's the same image but changed a little bit. That's I think one of my favorite things. Little things.
I love that. I love that you just said that because that's exactly it. It's taking something so Eastern like Journey to the West, taking that imagery and then applying to it the Superman story, which is so Western. And I think that's part of what makes Toriyama's story so universal and so fascinating. The way he just mashes these two together in a way that you don't often see done successfully.
Yeah, absolutely. That still continues nowadays. I was actually writing a script and it was like one of the worst moments in Dragon Ball Super for me. And the thing I wrote about was about Jiren's backstory being one of the worst, because it was one of these moments where you're thinking, okay, Jiren is this basically wall of meat. We need something to redeem him, and the best thing we can do is about the backstory. The backstory can at least go some way as to explain what's going on. What do we get? It's the Batman origin story. I mean, at least with Goku's Superman connections, there's interesting stuff and additional content to go on. With Jiren, there was nothing. So sometimes these references to Western culture is a bit basic, whereas with Journey to the West, there's just so many different envelopes and connotations, denotations, all this kind of stuff that you just peel back the layers and you find even more stuff.
Especially when you look back to one of the strongest, in our mind at least, parts of Super R, the designs of the gods of destructions and the Kais and all that like the whole idea of those little gods being very moody, like it's very in vain to what Journey to the West was with its deities and demons, and like the whole Tournament of Power idea without sadly the stakeless and spineless attempt that Super did is very in vain to how the godly hierarchy looked in Journey to the West and all that, all that little conflict that was there and how Sun Wukong was always at odds with them and was constantly punished by them after he angered them off too many times, essentially. Angered them pretty badly.
Oh, yeah. No, from all the constant stuff that I see, it's just they constantly try and find some ways to put Sun Wukong down, and whatever they do, it pretty much doesn't work. And that pretty much is the case with Goku. And again, in Super, they're actually touching upon the fact with Goku challenging the gods and defying them, as in getting as strong, if not stronger than them. And they have to come up with different ways to try and quell his desire for power and domination. So, you try and come up with the Tournament of Power, which is meant to be this ultimate thing where universal erasure is a main thing. But then what does Goku do? Oh, he gets the same power that Beerus has, but better. As in okay. But the best thing about that is that it doesn't just end there. Going back to the Moro arc again, and spoilers, it just shows that Goku is still a bit of a hothead. And despite having this power, he still is learning, and Wukong is always seen to be learning and being a little bit gung-ho about stuff, which is what Goku is.
Yeah, I think something interesting about the text is that Sun Wukong, when we first meet him in this story, is actually being punished. He's been crushed for hundreds of years under a mountain, Five Finger Mountain, because he caused all sorts of chaos in heaven. And so his whole journey with Tripitaka is supposed to be him finding enlightenment and, making amends and being a better person, growing. And I think that initially we see this with Goku, where he's just kind of this wild boy who just cares about fighting. And as he travels, we see a more empathetic side to him and he becomes more of a hero. It's kind of a bummer to see they kind of have fluctuated on that. It's like they keep making him relearn the same lessons. But it's definitely there. And I think that was a basis for a lot of Goku's story arc. Krillin, like you guys said, it became another analog for Tripitaka. And so how does he start off? Obsessed with, being sneaky and with his own pride. And he has the girly mags. So again, the opposite of Tripitaka, who couldn't be more Buddhist and detached. The Nimbus cloud, actually, Sun Wukong has a magical cloud he flies on. But just like Goku, he sometimes seems to fly on his own. So I'm not quite sure why he hasn't.
This really kind of harks back to the original topic in that there is tons of meaning to be had just from this one text from centuries ago in, Eastern culture. And even though we all like to think, Dragon Ball has a lot of Western connections, and it certainly does, but, this is the original one. This is the thing that kind of got it going. Journey to the West was the thing that's got it moving. And after many iterations, with the Adventures of Tong Po and stuff like that, and Dragon Boy, there were false starts, but eventually Toriyama did get it. And again, this was Torishima poking Toriyama and saying, hey, that doesn't really work well, change it. And eventually getting it, saying, okay, let's run with this. Oh, okay, the first arc isn't all that great. Add some tournaments, add Krillin, there you go. And then we get Dragon Ball as we know it. Because the first arc of the manga didn't actually do that well in Japan. It was it was fine. Goku was a bit of a blank slate, and I think Torishima was like saying in that article, oh, is it just going to be more of those kind of arcs and stuff like that?
Yeah, Torishima was a big part of the reason we got tournament arcs to kind of mix it up and show what Goku had learned. And now they've become such a staple of the series. We can't imagine Dragon Ball without tournament arcs. In fact, it's hard to imagine a lot of shonen without tournament arcs.
Oh yeah, precisely. Yu Yu Hakusho to name but one. Hunter x Hunter and stuff like that. It's just, there's so many to think of. And Dragon Ball may not be the most well-known now, yeah, in comparison in terms of like the archetype, but it certainly paved the way for things as we know them to actually then change. So Journey to the West is very important. It may not be as accessible for most people, but it's good to know at least the basics, that this show does have a lot of meaning. It really does. And there's a lot of examples and a lot of influence. It's just, at the same time, you're trying to run a business, and Journey to the West is like, you can't really like think about the details. You need to think, what are the kids going to read? It's important to remember that, but it's also important to say and challenge the idea that Dragon Ball has no meaning. It does. And Journey to the West, again, just knowing a little bit more and encouraging people to actually read it or listen to it if there's an audiobook version. Really just, I think what we're trying to all say is just like, let's just sit down or listen, read, whatever you can do, and take the time to understand the biggest contributor to Dragon Ball's DNA.
This is also where I want to really encourage people to check out Derek Padula's works. He does a great job about breaking down the meaning behind Dragon Ball, the influences behind it, the combination of Taoism, Buddhism, Shinto, all of that, Confucianism, all in Dragon Ball. It's all there. And Derek Padula does such a great job of dissecting that in a way that's easy to comprehend. It's totally readable, not at all dry or, thesaurus o'clock over here. No, it's very conversational, very accessible, but very, very informative. I mean, he will write words out in English translation, but he'll also give you the actual Chinese characters and give you a little pronunciation guide with Romanized letters. Is pinyin, I think, but he will do that so you can. It really makes it accessible if you really, really just want someone to break it down and help you see Dragon Ball in a new light. I highly recommend Derek Padula's series. Yeah, and he did them in 7 volumes, so I highly recommend that. I have them all just on my phone. I bought them like Kindle versions and I put them on my phone. And if you're really looking for a primer for Journey to the West, like I said, there are people on YouTube that have been doing this. Although honestly, I'm thinking if there's enough interest, I might just start reading this to you guys because I just want more people to get into it. And just to tell you something funny, for example, Tripitaka rides on a white horse the whole time. And this white horse is actually a dragon prince. So he's like a literal dragon, like the eternal dragon, who's turned into a horse to give him a ride. And there's multiple times they run into issues with water. Like there's a demon in the water and we can't fight him because the Monkey King can't swim very well or something or other. Or Tripitaka's kidnapped. What do we do? And it's like the horse doesn't speak up. It's like they all just forgot. And the horse doesn't feel like reminding them that he's a dragon. And you think maybe the author forgot, but no, because there is a point where the horse is like, oh God, Tripitaka's been kidnapped. Sun Wukong's gone. Pigsy and Sandy, the other two, demons are out of commission. He's like, I guess it's up to me. And he finally turns into a dragon and tries to save him. And I just find that hilarious that the freaking horse is just kind of like, well, they don't remember I'm a dragon and I'm not going to remind them. Like, I don't want to do anything. So don't be the horse and not do anything. Go out there, be Sun Wukong and read Journey to the West.
Yeah, that just sounds exactly like Toriyama's subversion thing. You got like probably one of the most powerful sidekick characters in the story. And it's just like, why didn't you help us? You never asked.
Yeah.
So after all of that deep and insightful research into Dragon Ball and the inner connotations of it, just really understanding the DNA of this really fascinating IP and story, we're just going to talk about random voice acting stuff and stuff that what we do, much more down to earth in that kind of sense. So yeah, we touched upon this briefly at the beginning that, Lucia, you voice Trunks in Dragon Ball R&R, right?
I do.
What other, voice acting examples have you done recently that you can talk about, would you say really gets you hype for voice acting?
That I've done recently, I was in a couple foreign films that we did the English dub for. I actually got an IMDb page for them, which was pretty cool. One was First Kings, where I was actually the female lead in that, which is the story of Romulus and Remus and the building of Rome. Really kind of a downer movie though, so be ready for like harsh historical drama with a lot of death if you want that. The other one that I did was it's kind of like this, it's called a Divine Fury, and it's kind of like this Constantine with martial arts sort of story where like these monks that do martial arts fighting demons and exorcising them. So it's a lot of fun. You'll recognize some voice actors, like Aaron Dismuke is the villain in it. Chris Rager is in it. He directed it as well. Dalton Broback was actually one of the monk's sidekick, the like young monk that's still training. So it was great because Aaron Dismuke had to imitate him at one point. And of course, that's like one of Dalton's voice acting idols. So that was a trip. So that's what I've done recently, voice acting wise. And it was pretty interesting because for the Italian film, The First Kings, we had to go for a very naturalistic voicing approach. The director, Chris Rager, very much was like, nothing too anime. You want to really feel realistic. But for Divine Fury, there was a little more flexibility because it was campier and sillier, kind of like action horror. I just played a bunch of various children's voices in that one and some other like background voices. So that was really fun where I got to just kind of be campy and ridiculous. Actually, I think I did a voice similar to Trunks when I was doing one of the background orphans that was just kind of like picking on the other kid. As opposed to First Kings, like I had to call my theater background and not do the
oh
stuff
yeah,
we
of
do
course,
for anime.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
That's one of those things, really. We always have to try and like learn the anime, kind of that gasp thing, but then you have to unlearn it. So you go, oh no, I can't do that. Dang, and it's
hard.
Incidentally, I actually got to meet Aaron back in January. He was at an Irish convention. Yeah, he was there with Sarah Wiedenheft, and it was like really surreal because it was like, oh, that's really cool, meeting Aaron and stuff like that. It turns out, he's heard of what I do, so that was kind of an interesting kind of like connection of minds and stuff. And again, it was also really interesting also meeting the voice actress for the Omni King. And also, incidentally, not a lot of people know this, but one time I actually did some background lines for Ip Man 3.
Really? Oh no, you did mention this before.
Yeah, but for those of you who don't know, I was in town one time with like Kaiser and Lanny, and we stopped up for Okratron, and it was like Stabber's just like, oh hey, basically we like doing this thing. You want to do that while you wait? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. Like not paid or anything. It's like cool. So basically we just did these random like background foley. So it's nothing any special. It wasn't like any characters or anything like that, but it's just like in all the stuff you get like, yeah, that's right, yeah, check down it, man, yeah, you can do this right there. And then basically in the Foley when he's just kicking our asses and he's just like, yeah, just Kaiser, Lanny, and myself in this booth together, basically just throwing ourselves around the booth, trying not to hit each other. So that
must have been so cool.
Yeah, no, that was quite interesting, and it was like really, that was a lot of fun, and it was really interesting to see while we were waiting, we could actually hear it was the end of Z Kai actually being recorded. Like
no way.
They were going through Schemel's recording for like sorry, the end of the road, boo. Maybe we'll meet each other sometime later. Just like that, they kind of obviously he'd been in town the day before.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, no. So I think they were just going over his lines and just checking them, like picking what takes and stuff. We didn't see it happening. We just heard it like in one of the other booths and stuff like that. Again, that's kind of my connection to what you were doing, but kind of like foreign film dubbing. I'd love to do more of that. So who knows?
Well, come to Dallas and come do some with us.
I'm so busy these days, seriously. And
well, you should come because Haverok's coming. Also, Haverok, you should come here.
I mean, we don't have visas anymore, so hey.
And unfortunately, I'm soon to be a doggo dad, so basically, I need to stay here and stuff like that and look after Papa.
Speaking about the whole voice acting stuff, like after I started to do some more directing stuff for R&R, like I feel how how much harder it is to direct people if you are not a voice actor. And when you like, I can give them the directions for like dialogues, but directing animo sounds and animo follies is such an alien word to me.
I have to say, Haverok, I really enjoyed when you directed me, because since you write these scripts, you have such an understanding of exactly how you want the mood and the tone. And so the thing I hate the most when I'm voice acting is when like the directors just kind of like, just go. And I'm kind of like, yeah, but there's like 50 ways I could read this. Like, what do you want? And you have such an idea of exactly the tone you're going for. I have found it super helpful when you direct me, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I'm always panicking. And I'm like, must help follies.
Yeah, no, it's just like I only kind of know the Foley's is because I've just chosen to make that my specialty in some ways.
Well, you've been doing it for so long, you know, the whole Dragon Ball fighting. As much as people want to say a bridge series are silly, that was still legitimate voice acting you did. You developed legitimate skills. Like,
of course, like from episode 14 onwards of DBZA, Kaiser was directing over Skype and now Discord and stuff like that. And basically it would get to that point, you're like, okay, which lines are we doing? Are we doing Ku or Han? And stuff like that, as in Goku and Gohan. So we just call it Ku or Han. I remember for recording for episode 30 that took like 2 hours to record the first half. And 25 takes for Super Saiyan, that one. And that was me trying to do that.
It makes sense that for Ku, you know, you warm up with Ku, it's sillier, and then you get down to business to record the Hans.
It's all about the Han, yeah. So this actually leads well into R&R, so we'll talk about it briefly. But if you're new to the podcast itself, Dragon Ball R&R is basically like a spin-off audio manga dub of a What If series I did called What If Raditz Turn Good. And it got to the point where the kids in that series weren't going to be doing anything. Dragon Ball Super, the kids don't do anything in Super except irritate people as Gotenks and stuff, obviously. So I thought, well, okay, let's do a spin-off. And that came about in R&R, as in that gives more of a slice of life thing where the children characters get to do stuff. So Lucia voices Trunks, obviously, but what would you say has been like the best highlight? Like, it can be a line or what you've seen in the script or whatever. What's been like the really big standout moment for you?
Besides getting to meet everyone at San Japan, which was phenomenal, I think a really big thing I love to do was anytime I get to have explore that chemistry between Trunks and the people around him, because we never really get that from the show. Kid Trunks is just kind of, you know, whatever. And seeing that hesitance he has with his father, who he wants to be proud of him, but who he knows is kind of harsh and not necessarily going to be open emotionally, versus, you know, still having that pride in his father and how he brags about him. I don't know. I've really loved exploring Trunks's relationships. How is it different with Goten versus with Ranch? How does he feel about Raditz, who his father, you know, looks down his nose at? So that for me has been huge. Just being able to really kind of dive into this character and give him some psychological meat, as it were.
One fan theory, which I've actually now said I'm taking this now because this is really good, was that the three kids, because a lot of people think that Ranch is a bit of a Mary Sue, and admittedly, I will say in the first couple of episodes, yeah, I did kind of lean a bit towards that. I'm bringing it back. I'm lampshading that now. Yeah, that's just a case of learning how to write for an OC and stuff like that. But one theory which I really do subscribe to, it came up of the idea of logos, ethos, and pathos. Goten is the ethos, as in the one that's always about emotion and always caring about others. Trunks is pathos or pathos or whatever, as in, you know, like being kind of more like impulsive and like basically, yeah, let's like involve things that are punching stuff, like, you know, action. You know, Trunks is a boy of action. Ranch is logos, as in like, yeah, logic, reason, all that kind of stuff, like kind of just stepping back, being more calculated about stuff. So each child of that trilogy actually plays off each other. So not one of them actually gets left in the dust, like with Goten in the original, because Goten doesn't really do stuff, except that one time where he stood up for Goku going like, I think Dad should go. Okay, you said that. Thanks for contributing, Goten. Okay.
That's your contribution for the decade. Go now. No, he was Goku Black, right? He was Goku Black.
Oh, it was Goten Black. Oh, my mistake.
Yeah, Goten, now go and sell our Kid Goku merchandise for us, please.
For an upcoming discussion, actually, and we were actually looking at like the amount of merch for the kids, and Trunks has a couple.
Mostly as an accessory for Vegeta or Goten.
Most of the time, yeah. Goten doesn't really have any.
Goten has none.
Not even your own, imitation Goten cell phone from Dragon Ball GT.
The kids aren't really characters, which is a real shame because I think they have so much potential. Something that really irritates me is when people are like, oh, Kid Trunks grows up to be just like Future Trunks. And I'm like, no, Future Trunks grew up in a completely different situation from Kid Trunks. This Kid Trunks should be quite different. And it could be so interesting to see the differences, but the show doesn't really care about those.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, though, the Trunks in the End of Z is actually a lot more passive than Future Trunks.
They switched personalities, like Goten and Trunks switched personalities at the end of Z, which is kind of interesting, but it would be more interesting if we had any seeds in Super for that. How this happened? But because like I like them at the end of Z. I must even say I kind of like the GT Trunks, at least in the beginning. I kind of feel that they were trying to make him kind of different from Future Trunks, except for the ugly shorts. Like you never should have worn that, boy. Like you don't look good in shorts.
It's interesting that you mentioned the shorts. Everyone basically rags on him for the ascot.
Yeah, I diss the shorts. Oh,
yeah. Okay. All right.
Hey, you know what? How many people are now wearing like ascots and scarves and stuff that they can put on their faces like a makeshift mask?
Trunks
I'm just saying, Trunks is ahead of the curve. He knew it was coming.
The biggest problem was that he didn't have much to do, but I cannot say that I didn't like his personality in GT, like I think that there was something interesting there, but suddenly they toned him down pretty badly, so but it was a decent start,
GT definitely has its flaws, but I think it has more strengths than most people want to acknowledge, although it doesn't help that the English dub we got wasn't exactly accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I often say that the pan in the Japanese dub is nowhere near as irritating as the English dub. Nowhere near as irritating. Yeah, it's as I'm getting older, I'm understanding GT more and going like, you know what, it's not that bad. Really. Something that I think is funny is that a lot of the GT lines were recorded to be ultra serious because the soundtrack that we got was that like dun dun dun. It's just like mostly percussion and like electronic like background noise, right? While the original Japanese had bit by bit, right? Or dan dan, right? And so it's kind of funny because now you can watch GT English dub with the original soundtrack, but now it's kind of funny because they'll be all serious talking like, oh, well, I guess it's over for you. Well, the music's like dun 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 dun. It's actually hilarious to watch, and you're like, what's happening? And especially with Saber. And then you have the return of Omega Shenron. Boogly, 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 boogly. Dun, 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 exactly. Dun, dun, dun. And the arrival of Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta with what is essentially Christmas music. Da, 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 da. It's just like, ho ho, Merry Christmas! I'm Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. And so the spirit of Christmas. Exactly. It's weird. It's really weird. But yeah, I think that's a good way to wrap things up. So Lucia, thank you so much for joining us. And please do give us any places where we can find you. So plug away. My Twitter is at Lucia Lobosvilla. LuciaLobosvilla. I know. Sorry. I assume there'll be a link in the description. My YouTube channel that I'm currently doing an analysis. I just started a series looking into Ocarina of Time's temples and what their original intention was, what they were used for before they became, dungeons. And we're going to be examining the architecture, what we know about the people that live there or use them, and, any other material from other games we can extrapolate and form theories with. So, oh, well, that's great. So once again, thank you so much, Lucia, for joining us and talking about Journey to the West and whatnot. Thank you so much for having me. All I can say really is just be careful when you're sliding down the pole on the way out, because we've recently just had it re-waxed. So try and make me.
And there she goes.
Guys, there's a cat down here.
Don't call him Whiskers the Wonder Cat. Last time it wasn't pretty when we did that.
And don't drink the water he offers you. It's painful. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, everybody. And we hope to see you once again up on the lookout in the future. Take care, everybody.